Bright lights decide the fire. Your heart beats fast despite the truth that love is blind. I just wanna feel anything.
Welcome to the Clean and Filthy podcast with your host, Matthew M.
Hello and welcome back to the Clean and Filthy podcast, where we are clean and serene with a filthy mind in between. I am your host, Matthew M., and I am an addict in recovery. What up, everybody? Welcome to episode 23. We're almost done with all the steps and all the traditions. How is this possible? How is this possible? I hope everybody has had a blessed week. Hopefully everybody is having a great start to the week. Hopefully you had a wonderful weekend, and hopefully you are ready for a really fun episode of the Clean and Filthy podcast. First off, gotta say big thank you to our episode sponsor, Etc. by Emily. If you're looking for a job or you need party staffing or event staffing for an event or party, check out her information below in the description. They're a great company to work for. They're always hiring. I used to work there myself. So if you head on over to the website and you end up getting a job there, tell them that Matthew M. from the Clean and Filthy podcast sent you over. Also have to give a huge thank you to our episode theme music, Anything by Valentino Khan and Alice in Wonderland. Huge shout out to Mad Decent Records for allowing us to use that as our theme song here on the Clean and Filthy podcast. Woo! I love that. Also got to give a big what up thank you to our VIP supporters. These are the people on Patreon who make donations to help build this podcast. If you are interested in becoming one of our VIP contributors, one of our VIP supporters, please head over to the website, www.cleanandfilthypodcast.com. In the top right corner with all of the social media links, you will see our Patreon link. If you want to help donate, head on over to Patreon. And not only will you get one of these amazing Clean and Filthy podcast stickers to put on your car or your water bottle or wherever you possibly want to. I mean, you could just stick it on the front of your forehead as far as I'm concerned. Whatever you want to put it to help display and help grow this podcast, I appreciate it. And then in addition to that sticker, you also get a shout out on air. And our VIP supporters are Alex B, Cindy, Stephanie, Shar, Liana, Clint, and Alex T. Thank you all so much for your continued support, helping grow this podcast, helping us improve our product, and hopefully get out there and help more people. So thank you all so much. Got to give a big what up to anybody who's on the live stream right now over on youtube.com. What up? Get that chat popping. Let's go, let's go, let's go. For those who don't know, we broadcast every single Tuesday at 5 p.m. Arizona time live on youtube.com with episodes available for download later on that evening. So if you are on the YouTube stream right now, what up, everybody? I'm glad you guys are here. Thank you so much for the support. And if you want to help support this podcast even more, make sure you are subscribed to our channel on YouTube so you get a notification whenever we go live, which just so happens to be every single Tuesday at 5 p.m. And, of course, if you don't mind, please download the podcast from any and all podcast directories. Helps our numbers go up. Our numbers go up. We get more exposure. We get more exposure. We get to help more people. And that is the goal. So what up, everybody? Thank you for your support. If you are not on YouTube right now and you're checking us out on a podcast directory, thank you so much for being here. Welcome. I'm so happy that you're here, and hopefully you enjoy the rest of this episode and come back for more. If you are interested in watching the live stream, like I said, head on over to YouTube every single Tuesday, 5 p.m. And if you are listening on a podcast directory right now, because we are listed on all of them. We on Apple, we on Google, Spotify, Deezer, all of them. We're up there. So if you are on a podcast directory right now and you want to help support this podcast, please make sure to download all of our episodes and maybe throw us a rating. And if you hear something you like, please share us. We are a completely independent podcast. We have no producer. We have no editor. We have no marketing director. We have no large corporate contract with Spotify or any of these other services. This is all us. And the only way we can grow is by help of people like you, hearing something you like and sharing the message, sharing this podcast with somebody else that it might help. And that's how we're going to grow. And like I said, for the third time already, help more people. So we got to talk about what we are, what we do, what we don't do, and all that. Again, my name is Matthew M., and I am an addict in recovery. And this is the Clean and Filthy podcast. We are a weekly podcast based on the 12-step recovery model. We talk about the things that us recovering addicts go through in our daily lives, in our past, in our addiction, and also in our future of what we're trying to build towards. This is a safe place for anybody who maybe is an addict in recovery, an addict who's not in recovery, somebody who has questions about addiction, or maybe somebody who just wants to hang out and learn some things. Because the beautiful thing that I always say about recovery is that it's not about removing the drugs. It's about growing and learning how to become a better human being and live a better life. So if you're here, stick around. Maybe you'll hear something you like. If you're here and you're not an addict, stick around. Maybe you'll hear something you like. And if you do, please make sure to share it to everybody. So as I said, we are based on the 12-step fellowship model. But to make sure that we do not violate any traditions, specifically tradition 11, which we're going to be talking about today, I will not be identifying what fellowship I personally attend. I will not be identifying what my home group is or endorsing any one fellowship or one group or a sober living or recovery residence or a treatment center, anything like that, to make sure that I do stay in line with the traditions and make sure that we come from a place of unity. But if you have questions about those things and you need information about a specific fellowship or specific meetings or treatment centers or any of those things that we will not be discussing here on air, please reach out to me directly. I would be more than happy to help you out with that. You can email me directly at Matthew@CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com, or you can just head to the website, hit us up on our Contact Us page, or you can head over to any of our social media accounts, which are also listed on the website. We're on everything, and I always love getting in contact with new people, with new fans of this podcast, with making new friends out here. That's what we're here to do. So if you have any of those questions, please reach out. But I just want to make sure it's known that we will not be discussing certain topics here on air. Also, I want to make sure it's known that this podcast is not supposed to replace going to a meeting or working steps or calling your sponsor or being of service or having a home group. This is not a replacement for those elements of recovery. At the end of the day, we just want to be able to be an adjunct, to be a helpful resource to your recovery or to somebody who has questions about recovery or questions about addiction and just maybe just has a family member who's struggling with the disease of addiction and just doesn't understand it. That's what we're here to do. So please, if you have any questions at all, reach out to me. If there's anything that you like about this podcast, let me know. I don't mind hearing that. And if there's anything you don't like about this podcast, also please let me know. Constructive criticism is the way that this podcast is going to grow and going to be able to be a better product to help more people. I should have a counter with how many times I've said that already. We're not even through the intro, and I've already said that like 5 times. I guess we're really in a helpful, altruistic type of mood today. So that is what we do. That's what we don't do. And it's kind of the ins and outs of the intro there. So hopefully, if you're here for the first time, welcome. Stick around. If you're not here for the first time, welcome as well. Thank you for being here. Thank you for helping this product grow. I'm going to tell you again later, but I'm going to start it off right and tell you that if nobody has told you today that they love you, I love each and every one of you. I might not know you. I might never meet you, but I love you. And I appreciate you being a part of my recovery and my journey through this whole experience. So thank you so much. I love you all. Thank you. Also, have to again say the website is still acting up, but it will get taken care of. I promise. This last week has been very crazy. I need an IT guy or a web development guy who can handle the things that are above my pay grade. And considering this is an independent podcast, that pay grade is pretty low. Also, just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page with that. Also, if you're watching right now live and you're having some deja vu because I was wearing this exact same outfit 7 days ago, there's a reason for that. We will get into that a little bit later. But this is, in fact, episode 23, not episode 22. But if you just were watching with no sound on, you wouldn't probably know the difference. So, just so everybody knows, everybody's clear, we're where we're supposed to be. And let's get into our first segment of the week.
Let's head to the lab for some R&D. Recovery and development.
That's right, y'all. We are in the lab. We out here with our lab coats. We got our pipettes out. We got our safety goggles. We might be running some tests. We might be editing some genes and stuff. We are in the lab. This is the part of the show where every single week we discuss something out of the 12-step recovery model. It might be a step. It might be a tradition. It might be a concept. It might be a spiritual principle. And we're going to get deeper as we've worked our way through here. We're going to get into some other topics as well. But as we say, each week we cover one of these steps or traditions. First, 1 through 12 episodes, 1 through steps, 1 through 12. And now we're on episode 23, which means, thanks to my math and design work or poor planning there, we are on tradition 11. So this is definitely the part of the show where we get deep into recovery, get deeper into some topics, the things that us addicts go through and implement in our lives, how we learn a new way to live. And the way we do that is through step work, is through tradition work, is through learning these spiritual principles within and applying them in our lives. So definitely going to get deep into some recovery here. And as I've always said, the traditions are that next level. Tradition work is next level type recovery stuff. Steps, very, basic prerequisite type of thing tied directly into our active addiction. Tradition work goes deep, takes that recovery to the next level. So this might be a lot. It might be a little overwhelming in some ways. It might not make sense. That's okay. That is perfectly okay. If you're here and it's not making sense, that's all right. Just stick around. And, if you want to, go back and listen to the previous 22 episodes of the Clean and Filthy podcast, listed on every podcast directory. Wherever you get your podcasts, please download the previous episodes. Listen to them in order. They will build on each other. The steps build on each other. The traditions build off of the steps and off of the previous traditions. So as we keep going and growing next level, it takes kind of a lot of prior information. So hopefully this podcast can give you some of that information. So what does tradition 11 say? Now, this is a fun tradition before we even read it, because every single episode, when in my intro, I say that I will not be identifying as what my fellowship of choice is, it is this tradition that I am looking to uphold. It is this tradition that I'm speaking directly about. So it's fun that it took us 23 episodes to get to this tradition, but now we're going to go a little bit deeper into what this tradition really means and why I reference it every single episode. So, tradition 11 says, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. Before we even get anywhere into it, we got to kind of look that this is another one of those traditions where there's kind of two separate things. First part, we're talking about public relations, traction versus promotion. Second part of it, we're talking about personal anonymity. So we're going to break it down to two separate elements here. As we've talked about in the past with a lot of traditions, sometimes they just take two ideas that maybe this addict doesn't see a direct correlation, and they just smush them together and say, here you go. There probably technically should have been like 24 traditions with how many of them kind of have, I don't want to say exclusive ideas, but ideas that don't as seamlessly flow in this addict's humble opinion. So this one is kind of one of those. Before we get into the first part of it, we got to look at the spiritual principles that are within this tradition. Obviously, anonymity says it right there in the words. Anytime it says a spiritual principle in the title of the step or tradition, that's obviously going to be a pretty big spiritual principle within that step or tradition. We also have to look at humility and unity, gratitude, integrity, discernment, and faith. And again, when it comes to spiritual principles that I list before we get into each one of these steps or traditions, I'm talking about the spiritual principles that directly vibe with me personally. There are a number of other spiritual principles that vibe directly with every step and tradition that I don't mention. But this is just for me personally, where I'm at in my recovery, which ones really vibe directly with me. So that is the list of those. Before we even get into this first part, I want to read something out of the literature. It says that basing our policy on attraction means we must pay attention to what is attractive. The message. The message is what is attractive. And again, let's rehash some things here. What is the message? Right? Because we talk about the primary purpose. The primary purpose of the fellowship is to carry the message. And what is that message? That message is that an addict, any addict, can stop using, lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. And that right there is a very attractive message. That right there is what can bring people to the fellowship. So we're going to get into this, but we got to first look at what is attraction versus promotion. All right? I will admit, this was a concept that was lost on your boy for a while in my early recovery. When we would read the traditions each meeting, the traditions for me were just like, okay, I'm just going to read this. I'm not internalizing this. This doesn't make sense to me. Until I got a little bit more recovery under my belt, till I got a little bit more knowledge about recovery. So if you're sitting here right now like, I don't fucking get this, that's cool. Stay, and you will. That was my experience. That was my experience of Strength and Hope when it comes to a lot of the tradition stuff. There are elements of the traditions that I will be learning about for years to come. But first, we got to look at, what does attraction mean? Based on the definition of the word. Attraction means, it's defined as the action or power of evoking interest, pleasure, or liking for someone or something. All right, that makes sense. And that's why when it comes to the fellowship, we give information about that fellowship and we live the results. We want to make sure that there's information about the fellowship, but we don't want to be bragging about the fellowship. We want to make sure that when we present that information, it has to be regarding attraction rather than promotion. And it's massively important to be able to have the public know that recovery is a thing, that the fellowship is a thing, because there are so many people, myself included, that maybe had heard about the fellowships within recovery from movies or from some pop culture type of thing, or, oh yeah, that celebrity went back to, blank anonymous, but I didn't have true information about it. I didn't understand the program. I didn't understand the message. So being able to carry that message and allow more people to see it is a very important thing. And it also helps to counteract potential misinformation that, oh, the fellowship's religious or it's cultish or whatever that is. So that's why it's so important to put the information out there in an attractive way. But now we got to look at, what does promotion mean? Promotion is defined as to raise to a higher rank, status, degree, etc. This speaks to making promises of results, almost sounding like a salesman pitching an idea. And that's what we want to avoid. We want to carry that message. We want to attract with that message rather than promoting something with some guaranteed promise. That is not attractive. That is promotion. It says in the literature, to carry out our policy of attraction rather than promotion, we present ourselves and our program with humility, honesty, and simplicity, and we allow the miracle of recovery to speak for itself. We don't make promises or claims. We don't speak as representatives of that fellowship. We're simply members, not spokespeople. We carry the message. We don't claim that the message is something different than what I read above. That is the message, nothing more than that. And that allows us to be attractive to the public, to the addict who still suffers. It says in the literature, it says tradition 11 tells us that not only is the truth enough, any attempt at promotion thins out the truth. It takes away from its power. Now, I want to talk about something we mentioned on a previous episode that I feel really ties in to this as well. We talked about this on a previous episode, how there was a flyer that was going around in the middle of the pandemic celebrating a specific member celebrating X amount of years. I don't remember how many years it was, 40-something years. And it used the member's face. He's a movie actor, pretty solid star. It used his face, his name, and said, come celebrate blank clean time, star of this movie. I don't want to say who it was, all that. I don't want to violate their anonymity, even though it was violated on a fucking flyer. But I don't want to go into that. That in itself is blatant promotion. It's blatant promotion of, look, this guy's a celebrity. Look, he comes to this meeting. Look, you want to be here too. You could end up with 40 years and be a Hollywood star. That's how this addict sees that shit. And that is a problem. Instead of simply saying the members without a picture, without the star of this movie, simply saying the member is celebrating however many years. That's all that's needed. Technically, in my opinion, from my humble perspective, that story violates this tradition twice. Because not only is it now about promotion, it's also blatant non-personal anonymity in press, radio, and films. So this is like a twofer, in my opinion. Could be wrong, but in my opinion, that's how I see it. It says in the literature, we do not call attention to ourselves personally, even when we are sharing about the miracle of recovery in our lives. And now this can be a difficult topic because technically, if we're looking at that last example that I just mentioned about that celebrity, that movie star, that would make the fellowship and recovery more knowledgeable to the public. More people could potentially see that. So I understand that at times it seems like that could be a really good way to attract. But when we start bringing in celebrities or bringing in almost like outside issues to attract, now it's becoming promotion. And that's something that is difficult for me at times. Because, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in terms of my personal anonymity and my want to say how amazing the fellowship is and how much it helped me. So we'll talk about that a little bit further. But it says in the literature, it says, the more known we are by the public, the more likely it is that addicts seeking recovery or their friends, relatives, or coworkers will think of us and know where to find us when they decide to seek help. So by reading that out of the literature, it almost makes it like, well, maybe it was okay that they were promoting this single person, breaking his anonymity, using his name and his IMDb page credentials. But it's still a tradition violation, and it can get murky. I admit that. It can get murky when it comes to trying to do the best to build knowledge about the fellowship while also following within the traditions. And we're going to talk about this personally with how this relates to the podcast here on the Clean and Filthy podcast as well. So we have to look at the personal anonymity in press, radio, and films part of this tradition. It says in the literature, the personal anonymity this tradition demands also offers protection. It protects us from the notoriety that might threaten our own recovery. It protects the program from our personal shortcomings. And it sets the message free to do its work beyond the limits our personalities present.
That part.
Because at the end of the day, that is the most important thing. Setting that message free. Setting that message free to be able to be heard by people, addicts that need recovery is so vital. And if we apply that message coming from this person, then it looks like this person is a spokesperson for the fellowship. That's a problem. Because we have to look at what would the overall impact potentially be. What if that person is a blatant spokesperson for the fellowship and they relapse? Now there are going to be people who identify that person's relapse with the fellowship as a whole and might write it off saying, fellowship doesn't work. Look, so-and-so was an avid member of that fellowship and they used, so why am I going to go there? Or even worse, then what if somebody's a celebrity claiming ride or die for that fellowship, and then they get brought up on some heinous charge, some murder or sexual assault or something that isn't just I got a possession charge, like some foul shit. How is that going to impact the public perception of the fellowship as a whole? Those are things that have to be looked at. That's why this element of personal anonymity within press, radio, and films is so important. That's why we don't speak as a point of authority for the fellowship. That's why if you go to a convention, in the readings, they will mention if any members from the news media or journalists ask to speak to you, please do not talk with them. Please direct them to our public relations people. Because, and I do want to mention that there are certain service positions that much more frequently violate their personal anonymity. And that might be at times in press, radio, and film, depending on the service position. Public relations, one of the subcommittees I'm a part of. When we do a presentation, we give our full name. We are violating our own anonymity in that moment. But there are certain things that's necessary to help build public knowledge about the fellowship. So I do want to mention that is something that sometimes can occur. But we have to remember that this tradition is from the 50s, adapted from the 20s. And it says in the literature that it's not appropriate for members to be associated with the fellowship name in any form of media that is available to the general public. We also have to remember, though, that when this came out, TVs weren't even in most people's houses. There was no social media. There wasn't fellowship merchandise. There weren't bumper stickers hanging out on old fucking like Model Ts and shit back in the day. That wasn't what it was. So things have definitely changed. It says in the literature, it says technology, communication, and the world at large have changed dramatically since the 11th tradition first took shape. So much in the beginning was when these traditions were first formulated, addicts weren't legally allowed to congregate in many, many states. There are so many stories of in the beginning of the fellowship trying to be created that the police would just be hanging out, waiting to see where these addicts are going to fucking meet up. Waiting to see. And now that it's changed so much, we have to understand what that means in the current world, in the current social media tech age that we live in. So, and we're gonna get into this a little bit more. First, I want to kind of talk about my personal experience when it comes to my anonymity. I have always been blatantly open that I am an addict. Often to certain people in my life's unhappiness about how open I am about it. And it could be potentially detrimental to me. It might be. I might get to a place in life where I'm running for I don't know, not president, but a mayoral seat. And they say, hey, you're an addict. And I say, yeah, I am. Because I believe personally that my breaking my own anonymity helps me carry the message to the best of my ability. And that's my personal story. That's for me personally. How I build my recovery journey is going to be different than a lot of people. So that is for me personally. It says in the literature, it says, Tradition 11 tells us that the choice to reveal our membership comes with an obligation to protect the fellowship's public representation. And that's something that, for me, especially early on, I didn't really understand. I didn't really understand that. I was all about, hey, I'm an addict. Look at me. This is the fellowship I go to. Not thinking about the responsibility that I then carry by showing my membership to the fellowship. Not thinking about the responsibility that I carry and the perception that people may make about addicts in recovery based on my interactions with them, based on how I present myself, based on how I act. And I had no concept of that when I first got into recovery. When I first got clean, I was like, yes, I'm a fucking addict. Yeah, this is the fellowship I go to. What? Let's fucking go. That was the way I looked at it. In a lot of ways, I was being promotional instead of attractive. Attractive. Whatever. I digress. And when it came to this podcast, this is something I really wanted to make sure I stayed in line with. I really wanted to make sure I stayed in line with this. Because literally, right now, we are technically press, I don't know, maybe that one doesn't fit, but also radio. Podcasts are essentially radio in today's day and age. Back in the fucking 20s, radio was the big deal. Now, literally, who really listens to the radio? I can't tell you the last time I had the radio on, like, for real. But when this was written, that's what we were talking about. So this podcast, if I'm sitting up here speaking from a position of a specific fellowship, that blatantly, in my opinion, seemed like a tradition violation. So, what do we do in the program when we need something, when we don't know something? What do we say? Help me. So that's what I did. And I reached out to a member with 30 plus years and said, hey, this is what I'm looking to do with this podcast. I want to make sure I don't violate any traditions. And he gave me a number to somebody that's part of the World Service Board. So I reached out to that person and I said, help me. And then I got more information. And I was informed by multiple people that as long as I personally am not identifying which fellowship I'm speaking of on this podcast, I'm staying in line with traditions. Anybody who knows me knows what fellowship I go to. Anybody who knows the language I'm using knows what fellowship I go to. And that's fine. But if I'm directly endorsing it, that's when it becomes a tradition violation, according to these members with a lot more time than me. So if you have a different perspective on that and you think I'm wrong, don't at me, at them. Or you can at me because you get my mentions up. So at me, bro. Come at me, bro. But that's that's the information that I received. And that's not saying that other people out there with recovery podcasts that do talk about specific fellowships or do identify specific things or do endorse different things. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm saying that for me personally, based on the information that I had obtained to get to this point, this is what I feel is in line with the traditions. And sometimes that can be difficult. That is my perspective on, my own experience, strength, and hope when it comes to my anonymity within this podcast. Obviously, I violated my anonymity by simply saying, hey, I'm an addict in recovery. What up, y'all? Obviously. But to identify, especially in the fact of press, radio, and films, is something that I felt was not in line with the traditions for me to do. But when we're talking about personal anonymity, we also need to talk about other members' personal anonymity. And this is something that is very, very important within the fellowship. It's another thing that has changed over time. When the fellowship first came about, you didn't want people knowing you were an addict. It was not a thing that was put on T-shirts or bumper stickers or mentioned on social media, or I don't know what was used back in like the 50s, like sent out on the telegram line. That's me identifying as an addict in Telegram. I think it's like, there you go. I digress. Sorry, y'all. But now we have to be careful about potentially violating somebody's anonymity by potentially breaking that anonymity and the impact that it may have on their life or their recovery. Because we don't know what that violation could potentially do within their life. Just because I'm loud and wild and yeah, I'm a fucking addict, woo! That doesn't mean that that's everybody's story, and that doesn't mean that it should or shouldn't be anybody else's story. And we have to remember that. And I'll admit, early on in recovery, I was so hype. I also was just about the time I started using Snapchat, and I immediately became a super Snap whore. So everything I did was on Snap. Everything. At a meeting, on Snap. Fellowshipping after the meeting, on Snap. Hanging out with recovery people, on Snap. And there were people that I then needed to go and delete off of that Snap because I violated their personal anonymity. And that is something that I wasn't consciously trying to do. I was a fucking newcomer who only saw the world through my eyes. And through my eyes, everybody should be as excited to tell the world about recovery as I am. But that's not everyone's story, nor should it be. So now, thankfully, based on some past, violations, I make sure that if I'm fellowshipping with somebody and I take a picture, I ask, hey, are you cool with me posting this? Or I gauge my posts off of other people's posts. If I'm taking a picture with somebody else that I know identifies in their social media presence as a member of the fellowship, I'm not worried about that. But when I get around other people, that's when it becomes a big thing. And this you see this all the time at conventions. You see this all the time at conventions where people just start taking pictures willy-nilly, and you get people in the background and this and that, and it's like that is a violation of somebody else's personal anonymity. And we really don't want to do that. It says in the literature, and I love this, it says, if we make that choice, if we violate somebody else's personal anonymity for someone else, we rob them of the opportunity to decide for themselves. And this ties in. What if it's somebody who's a police officer or a lawyer or a politician or a doctor? Because it says in the literature that once our anonymity is compromised, we can't get it back. So for somebody who maybe is in a very professional field, obviously they're not a professional within the fellowship. We talked about that on a previous episode of the Clean and Filthy podcast. Head back, check it out. But outside of the rooms, that fact could be detrimental to them. So we have to remember that. We have to remember that it's not for us to ever do. And we need to guard that. Other thing we got to talk about, we have to talk about social media. Because social media, the world we live in today, social media is a massive tool within recovery. It's a massive tool within life in a lot of ways. It's a massive tool to waste a fucking day of time doing nothing but looking at fucking memes. But it's a part of the majority of people's lives. So therefore, the majority of addicts' lives. So people are constantly breaking their anonymity. Personally, other people's, you could just, literally, just if you go through my friends list and see who my friends are, that's breaking their anonymity. Because you see who I am, you know I'm an addict in recovery, you see them, make the correlation, we all have the same, 800 mutual friends, what do you know? You know, that in itself. So all of these things within the tradition are built off of older ideas, but they can still very well be applied within our current social tech type of world that we live in. It says in the literature, it says applying tradition 11 means we have a responsibility to think about how we maintain our anonymity online. And this is where things can get a little wonky donkey. This is where things can get a little dicey. Because technically, anyone and everyone who was a member of that fellowship might be another person's first experience with that fellowship. Me walking around with a shirt with my symbol on it or on my car might be the first interaction that another human being in the public has with the fellowship. And that carries within it, that bears a lot of responsibility to it. It says in the literature, it says, when people know we are in the fellowship, we represent that fellowship, whether we mean to or not. Our actions, however inconsequential we might feel they are, reflect the program as a whole. If I'm road raging through the freeway and I'm, fuck you, get out of the way, and I've got a big ass logo on the back of my car, that first reflection might be that, damn, that fellowship has some angry fucking drivers in it. I'm not going to that fellowship because I don't want to deal with road rage. That seems like a totally over-the-top example because I'm fucking Matthew Triple Extra. All I do is over the fucking top. Y'all know this. But that is a truthful thing. That is a truthful thing. Wearing a fellowship shirt, and we've talked about this before, about a group that's close within the area who uses explicit language in their group name and has shirts with the fellowship logo and explicit language on it. Having those type of things might be the first interaction that a human being ever has with the fellowship. And potentially, if they're super opposed to profanity, might not go to that fellowship because the first thing they saw was this fellowship with the word fuck. They also probably are not a viewer or listener to the Clean and Filthy podcast if they have a problem with the word fuck. But I digress. But that is something when we're trying to be attractive from a fellowship-wide perspective that we have to think about. It says in the literature, we must remember that wherever we go, we always represent the fellowship to some degree. If we are seen acting poorly while we prominently display a fellowship logo on our t-shirt, we carry a distinctly unattractive message about our fellowship to the public. And that element right there is so not thought of in the social media world that we live in, where everybody has an opinion and feels they need to post about everything. When people just think it's fun, oh, I'm just going to post something on my social media just to stir the pot, just to cause a problem, just to fuck with somebody. Well, that in itself could be detrimental to the fellowship. That in itself could cause harm. That in itself could keep an addict from wanting to go to that fellowship because that was their initial experience with it. And that's a scary thing. That's a scary thing where people could be not receiving the life-saving message because of outside stuff, because of outside things that are not fucking necessary. We talked about this on a previous episode about outside issues. Ties directly in here when it comes to social media. And it's so interesting to me where we're part of a fellowship that is so selfless and wanting to help each other and full of unity inside of a meeting. And then we leave those rooms and get on social media and it's just like battle lines drawn. This is my perspective. Fuck you if you have a different one. Come at me, bro. It's just so crazy to me. And I've done it. I'm not saying I'm exempt from here. I'm not saying I'm holier than that. I've done the same fucking thing. But that's something we got to look at, and that's something we got to work at. And we got to remember that at the end of the day, we are a representation of that fellowship. And being a representation of a positive spiritual perspective is what brings more people into the fellowship. It's what makes the fellowship attractive. That's what we're trying to do here. You know, when we carry the message while presenting recovery and the fellowship honestly and with humility and goodwill, that is what is attractive. When we're living by spiritual principles, that is what's attractive. Not the outside issues, not the flashy cars, not the, hey, I'm a celebrity, not the, I was in this movie. When we can carry that message honestly and connect with another addict, that's what's attractive. And that's what we have to aim for. I'm going to close with this quote. It's a long-ass quote, so bear with me. But it says, carrying the message is an act of faith and courage. There is a balance between not promoting the fellowship or ourselves and carrying a message of hope. We allow our experience to speak for itself and trust that others will hear what they need. We don't sell recovery like a used car. Our job in carrying the message is not to present a sales pitch, but to share experience, strength, and hope. That part. Because that's what we're here to do. I love that quote. That quote just ties up all of that so well. So that's what we have for tradition number 11. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of ways to apply it. There's a lot of ways it should probably be updated, but that's well beyond the thought process of this addict. So that's what we got. Hopefully that made some sense. Next week, y'all, it's going to be episode 24. It's going to be tradition number 12. Next week, we will have been officially done with all 12 steps and all 12 traditions. Bro, what? Fucking crazy. So that's what we got. Thanks for joining me in the lab. Let's head on off to our next segment. Put our gloves in the biohazardous disposal waste thing there, and join me next week in the lab. So, next up, it is time for our second segment of the show, entitled My Favorite Moment of the Week. No Bang sponsorship yet, but free ad read. The Clean and Filthy podcast is brought to you by Bang Energy. With 300 milligrams of caffeine, EAA aminos, super creatine, and ultra CoQ10, the Clean and Filthy podcast bangs every day. Some days, we might even bang twice. We love getting that bang up in our mouths with that delicious, succulent nectar. So if you want to be like the host of the Clean and Filthy podcast, make sure to go bang. It's never a bad time to bang. All right, I think that was a pretty good one. If somebody wants to snip this and send it somewhere, or else I might just snip this and send it to the Bang CEO. I don't know. We'll see. But that's our ad read. So let's get into my favorite moment of the week. What is this section of the show? This is where we talk about something that has occurred over the last week. It's supposed to be my favorite moment, but it is changed and metamorphosized into my favorite moments. Kind of a weekly wrap-up of things from pop culture, sports, news, media, social media, Instagram, TikTok, whatever's going on. You know we're going to talk about some sports. You know we're going to talk about Marvel because that's what we do here. This is my personal opinion. I might weave in a little bit of recovery. I might weave in a little bit of my experience, strength, and hope, but this is my personal recovery. I'm sorry, my personal perspective. Wow. My personal opinion. My God, I can't words. First up, you know we got to talk about the NBA Finals, man. Because since we last met, since we had our last warm virtual embrace here on the Clean and Filthy podcast, some things have happened. And we were up 2-1 when we last talked. And then Game 4 happened. And oh boy, Game 4 was painful. It was a very even game. We were tied at halftime. Suns starters, Booker, 42 points. Crowder, 15 points, 8 rebounds. 17 rebounds, but only 6 points. And Paul only had 10 points, 7 assists. So really, we had Booker. That was it. Bucks, Yanni Vowles, 26 points, 14 rebounds, 8 assists. And fucking Middleton dropped 40. And even still, we could have won. We shot a better field goal percentage. We had a better three-point percentage. We had better free throw percentage. We were pretty close when it comes to rebounds, assists, and points in the paint. But we had 17 fucking turnovers and only 5 offensive rebounds. What did that lead to? The Bucks having 19 more shot attempts. And they outscored us by 12 points in the fourth quarter. Fucking Bucks win, man. 109-103. Okay, tied up. 2-2. We're coming back to Arizona. Suns in 6 is still the vibe. Gotta win Game 5. Let's go. And oh my God, it was even more fucking painful than Game 4. We came out perfectly. We came out in the first quarter. We were up by 16 points. And, ooh, I said it when it happened. I said, I was watching the game with somebody, and I said, I do not like this. I do not like this. I would prefer we were not up this big. I would rather stay up by 3 to 5 points the whole fucking game than get up by 16 in the first quarter. Because there's just that psychological shit where even if you're playing tough, playing hard, you let off the fucking gas a little bit. You just do. It's proven based on that. And then the second quarter, the Bucks outscore us by 19 fucking points. Went into halftime up by 3. The game, we should have won this game. Every single stat was either even or in our favor. Every single major stat. Booker dropped 40. DA dropped 20 and 10. CP3 dropped 21 and 11. But you already know what Giannis is going to do. He's going to go off. That's what he does, right? And he hit 32 with 9 boards. Problem was, even when we could deal with Middleton getting 29 and 7. But fucking Drew Holiday, man. He had 27 points and 13 assists. And there were points in that fucking second half that Middleton and Holiday looked so incredibly automatic. It was like MJ when he got in his zone. I'm not saying either one of them are anything compared to Michael Jordan. But it was that type of vibe. Just when somebody gets into that fucking vibe, and it's just like they could be blindfolded, throwing offhanded from half court, and that motherfucker's going in. And that was how that was. And there were so many 50-50 balls that we didn't get. There were so many little shots that, again, rimmed out. There were so many costly turnovers, especially at the end of the game. Bad fouls, bullshit fouls, I'll say as well. Not again blaming the refs, but there were some really bad calls. And the Bucks win 123-119. So the Bucks are officially up 3-2 against the Suns. Game 6 is tonight, starting in like 6 minutes in Milwaukee. That is why we are wearing the same outfit as last week. And you might say, but Matthew M., host of the Clean and Filthy podcast, why are you wearing your lucky outfit when they didn't win last week? Well, I would say to you, shut the fuck up about my superstitions. And I will say that, yes, the lucky outfit does not always mean we're going to win. But every time we have one, I was wearing the lucky outfit. That's probably some form of confirmation bias or some shit. I don't know. But regardless, we're rocking it. I got hope. Suns win tonight. Suns in 7 is a new thing. That we need homie, the Suns in 4 dude, to come back and say Suns in 7, I'm not saying he needs to fight a Bucks fan. I'm just saying we need that fucking energy from that dude. Oh, my God. I can't believe I'm saying that. Anyway, also, it's my homegirl Liana's birthday today. She's a huge Suns fan. So hopefully we get a win for her tonight as well. For, Suns fan, birthday, finals game. I feel like that has to be a win. That's what we got for the NBA Finals. Let's digress. We're going to be talking about it again next week, so sorry to all of my non-sports fans. Come back now. Welcome. Weekly fitness update. Like I said, it's a new thing we're doing. My weight currently is 215.8 pounds. I worked out 4 days this last week. None of my workouts were that great, but they were all pretty solid. I actually had a pretty good leg day yesterday, which I will say that I had some gastro issues yesterday. So the fact that I went through my whole leg day was pretty awesome, considering how my stomach was feeling. And I will also say that I have been in some terrifying situations in my life. Gun at the back of my head, cop behind me when I had no license, no insurance, no registration, and multiple felonies in the car. But the absolute terror of being on a leg press machine with copious 45-pound plates on each side and bubble guts, bro, that's another level. That's another level. I'm just going to say that. But I proceeded through. I lived. I'm good. Didn't make a mess in the fucking gym. All was good. I digress. We got a new plan for August. My goal is in August, I'm going to stop lifting. I'm just going to be doing core and cardio. We talk about in the program that when the pain gets great enough, we'll do something different. The pain of having my sides and my stomach has officially gotten great enough, and I'm ready to do something different. So, favorite episode of the season. Further evidence of why I have no interest in dating. Go watch it. Also, huge shout out in the world of Instagram to Tank Sinatra. Not only does he look like Dana White, a beluga whale, every bald white male celebrity, but he's been doing these cat owner videos lately that have been hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Next thing we got to talk about, this is another one of those times where I planned out my favorite moment of the week. Like, this is going to be my favorite moment of the week. And of course, because every single time it happens, it failed miserably. And we're going to talk about Space Jam: A New Legacy. God, I wanted this to be my favorite moment of the week. This was 20 years in the making. And I'm a pretty fucking huge LeBron fan. Not as much now that he's in LA, but when he was in Miami, riding for that dude. And I always liked him a lot more than I ever liked Michael Jordan. And I loved Space Jam, the original, the real Space Jam. LeBron is a way better actor than MJ as well. If you don't believe me, go watch the movie Trainwreck. LeBron was amazing in it. And I love Don Cheadle. I love War Machine. Rhodey, that's my people. But his Algae Rhythm character, man, it was too much, bro. Even though his wardrobe was fire, I would rock the fuck out of every one of them shiny-ass suits, for the record. And again, I'm not going to spoiler alert anything here. Honestly, there wasn't really anything even worth spoiler alerting in it. But his whole character was just so over the top. And the whole story just seemed like this long fucking convoluted ass ad for Warner Brothers. Like, the storyline, like this family element of it seems so forced. And the updated story for like the newer tech generation, like we're going to attract people by using these crazy, video game analogies and supercomputers and welcome to the super server. Shit was corny. And this is from somebody who loves tech shit. Shit was corny. I understand. It's a kid's movie. But this is my part of the show, so I'm a bitch about it for a second. The whole Goon Squad, man, they did them dirty. Whew. Except for Damian Lillard's character. He was pretty cool in it. But the design, the names, like, go look at the picture of what they did to Diana Taurasi and her nose and tell me that they didn't do her dirty. Say the name Wet Fire more than once and tell me that's not a horrible name. Tell me that ain't the type of name that speaks to, like, you done went out and had about 15 Jack in the Box tacos at like 3:30 in the fucking morning. Wet Fire. Why the fuck y'all naming Klay Thompson's character after a goddamn emergency room trip for explosive diarrhea? That's horrible. Horrible. And yeah, it was awful. It was that, yeah. And I'm not saying that the original Monstars were amazing, but they were better than that shit. And everything, it's funny, even the thing that I really liked in the beginning of the movie ended up becoming annoying as fuck. I liked the fact that they involved the whole Warner Brothers world. I liked seeing the little mentions of the Matrix or DC characters, even though fuck DC, Marvel for life, but that was kind of cool. Or seeing LeBron in Harry Potter, glasses, that was cool. But then it just became so forced. The entire Wonder Woman scene was so unnecessary. It wasn't doing anything to build a character. We're just doing it to say, hey, look, remember Wonder Woman's one of our properties. Hey, guys. Yeah, we've got Wonder Woman. Like, that to me is that's just corny. That's not filmmaking. And I'm not trying to hold Space Jam to a filmmaker's quality standard here. We ain't comparing it with fucking Tarantino or Soderbergh or some shit. But if you're going to make a product, make a good product. It's not that tough. Like, in my opinion. The things I actually did like from it. Best part was the Bobby Knight reference, the chair throw. That was fire. The fact that Ernie Johnson from TNT was in it, because I fucking love EJ, and he could be in anything. He could announce Tiddlywinks, and I'd love it because I love EJ. The Michael Jordan scene was probably my favorite part of the movie. There was a cool Rick and Morty cameo. I don't really completely know why. Thankfully, it happened early in the movie, so I wasn't completely annoyed by this constant propagandistic display of Warner Brothers properties. Because by the end, I was just like, man, if they fucking show another goddamn character, like, it got to be too much. But I would say my favorite thing of it all is that it was on HBO Max. The fact that I didn't have to pay to see that, because I probably would have paid to see that. Because I was so excited to be in the movie theaters last week, I probably would have gone to pay this because, I love LeBron. I'm so glad I didn't fucking pay for it. Overall rating, 3.5 out of 10. Out of 10. I did not say 3.5 out of 5. I said 3.5 out of 10. And honestly, 3 out of 10. That's what I'm saying. 3 out of 10. No, I'll give it, okay, 3. 3.5. We'll say 3.5. I was going to say originally 4 because I do really love LeBron and I love the Space Jam LeBrons that they had in the movie, but it was definitely not as good as the original. And those Space Jam LeBrons were nothing compared to the Air Jordan 11 Space Jam, still one of the greatest shoes of all time. Also, the original soundtrack for Space Jam was fire. When it came out, like the time period, the artists they had on it, fire. I will tell you right now, pause this video, go YouTube, Monstars Anthem, Space Jam soundtrack. Tell me that shit isn't a slapper. Tell me that 20 years later, that shit isn't a slapper. If I hit 'em high, hit 'em high, hit 'em high, and you hit 'em low, I'm coming straight to the hole. Okay, I'm not going to get a copyright strike on this because I'm rapping a song from 20 years ago. That shit was fire. So, officially, fuck it, 3 stars. 3 out of 10. 3 out of 10. I don't think you really need to see it, personally. Whatever. Gotta say, one of my favorite moments was the fact that Deadpool, one of my favorite Marvel characters, officially made his MCU debut. Sort of. He was hanging out in a video. I think the video is actually a trailer for the movie Free Guy, which looks absolutely horrendous, for the record. The movie looks complete dumpster trash. But how they did this was amazing. They got Korg, who was from in Thor Ragnarok, and is voiced by Taika Waititi, and he's also an actor in Free Guy. And they did a reaction video. Ryan Reynolds and Taika did a reaction video like they were on YouTube, and the production value within that was hilarious. He's like, make sure you subscribe to my channel, talking about the last week episode of reviewing Cruella. It was incredibly meta, which I liked. It had this super totally on brand for Deadpool vibe. Also, it was interesting, they brought up one of the main complaints that had been about Deadpool was the whole concept of fridging, which is a comic book trope in which a female character is killed simply for the pain that it inflicts on the main character. Doesn't do anything else to her story or anything like that. It's just she's essentially being used as something to inflict pain on him. So I'd like that he mentioned that, which is also super meta and super on brand for Deadpool. Speaking of Taika Waititi, where we at with What We Do in the Shadows, bro? I need more than vampires in my life. Continue going down. One thing that I do really like about it, even though I still have really no desire to see Free Guy and absolutely would not go to pay for it, this did make me a little bit more interested. And the line that he says, that Deadpool says to Korg, he goes, yeah, Korg wasn't my first choice, but everyone else was busy over at Disney Plus. Loved that. Super meta, fourth wall breaking. I loved that. I'm going to talk real briefly just because it happened last Tuesday, and it's interesting from a perspective. MLB, Major League Baseball All-Stars, Shohei Ohtani, not only did he compete in the home run derby, but he was the starting pitcher and got the win and led off the game. Never happened before. That's pretty cool. Also, shout out Vladimir Guerrero Jr. His pops was one of probably my favorite all-time baseball player. And not only did Vladdy Jr. get a home run in the game, he got the MVP. And it's cool because he became the third father-son duo to ever homer in the All-Star game, along with the Bonzes and the Griffeys. So that was kind of cool. Got to give a rest in peace shout out to Biz Markie, absolutely legendary hip-hop artist from the 80s, part of the old Juice Crew. Everybody knows him for Just a Friend. He was the clown prince of hip-hop. He died from complications of type 2 diabetes at 57. Also have to give a rest in peace shout out to Lane Flack. He's a huge poker player. Six World Series of poker bracelets. Was one of the absolute best poker players in the early 2000s, which is when I was really getting into poker. He died at 52, so rest in peace to him. Got to give a quick mention. I know I don't have many Formula One fans out there watching this podcast, but the Formula One British Grand Prix from Silverstone was ridiculous. Like, lap one, Max Verstappen, the leader of Formula One championship points, and Lewis Hamilton get into an accident that sends Verstappen careening into the side wall. Thankfully, he was okay after he went to the hospital. I will admit, Lewis made a mistake there. He got a 10-second penalty and then was still able to come back and win the fucking Grand Prix. So now he's only behind by 8 points behind Verstappen for the championship. Let's go get another championship. Let's go, Lewis. Also, huge shout out to McLaren. They wrapped all of their cars, or both of their cars, in a Phoenix Suns livery. There's a tie between a co-owner of the McLaren with like a vice president of something within the Phoenix Suns organization. It was cool because then Cam Johnson took a picture in front of his McLaren and sent it back. It was kind of a cool little thing. Also, gotta say, from the world of TikTok, I have found somebody else that I will follow on TikTok. I'm not going to be on TikTok. I will be on Pornhub before I'm on TikTok. I keep setting that anti-TikTok tension right there. Hopefully it holds. But there's a dude named @LawByMike where he gives advice about interactions with police. And again, I'm not from like an anti-police perspective or saying all cops are bad. But at the end of the day, police know a lot more about laws than average human beings do. And I very much vibe with knowing the laws and knowing when there's these little things that police might use to try to get more information. You know, to say, oh, hey, you want to come in and get a change of clothes before I get you arrested? Oh, now they're in your house? Now you just open them up to any other evidence. So I think it's really cool to just get more information because that's how we become more intelligent as human beings. And that is an important thing. Gonna talk about one more thing here, and that is Loki episode 6. I hate to say it, y'all. I was pretty underwhelmed by the episode, honestly. It seemed very forced again. And I'm not gonna spoiler alert stuff, but there was one part of it that was just so like, oh, cringy. It definitely set things up in motion. 100%. And that's cool. That's very cool. But so much of what ended up happening was what has been predicted the whole time. Maybe he was named He Who Remains, But, and I guess that's one of the negative things of being super invested in the MCU and dissecting all of the content and understanding different back things and watching videos about certain things, because then things really aren't that surprising. And why didn't we get Owen Wilson on a fucking jet ski?
That part.
Is that too much to fucking ask for? Put the man on a jet ski.
That part, that part, that part, that part.
Anybody who hasn't watched the show doesn't get that reference. But I can't fully judge because we were told at the end that, in fact, there will be a season 2 of Loki. So hooray for that. So I can't really judge how I feel about the series. But as of right now, it's definitely my third favorite of the Disney Plus shows. There's only been 3 Disney Plus shows, for the record. And if we're including all Marvel television, from Netflix, from whatever, it's probably not even in my top 5. And I know some people are like all about Loki. They're like, oh my God, Loki's amazing. Super hardcore. I get that. I'm just not one of those people. I love Loki. I think he's a fucking incredible character. But I feel like so much was missed and underdone and underwhelming about this show, personally. So, I will say that I genuinely, as of this morning, didn't have a favorite moment of the week. We were just going to talk about those things, and I was going to say, I don't have a favorite moment of the week. Here's some stuff, because I like talking about stuff. And this morning, I can say I now have a favorite moment of the week. And I'm not going to say his name on air. I'm not going to call him out directly. But one of my boys is struggling. And last night was the closest I've ever been to having to use Narcan to save somebody's life. And last night was one of the scariest days, nights that I've had in my recovery. Seeing somebody going through fucking the grip, man. And my favorite moment of the week is that you're alive, my brother. And I don't know if you'll see this. I don't know if you'll hear this, because we weren't talking about my podcast last night much. You know, we were talking about bigger and more important things. But I'm glad you're alive, man. And it's crazy because I'm so tired today. I didn't go to bed until 9 o'clock this morning. So I got like 4 hours of sleep. So I'm lagging a little bit. But at the end of the day, when you get that phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning of, hey, do you have Narcan you can bring me? That's what we do. That's what we do. Because that's what somebody did for somebody before me, and they would do for me, and I would do for him, and he would do for somebody else, because we're a family. And I'm very glad you're alive, my brother. So that is my favorite moment of the week. It's crazy how moments pop up, apparently when they're supposed to, based on my higher power's time, I guess. So that's what we got for this week's favorite moment of the week. Come back next week. Check us out on all social medias. If you have anything from news, pop culture, anything that you want to have discussed on this podcast, send it over to me. Maybe it'll be my favorite moment of the week, especially those TikToks. I fucking hate TikTok, but I want to watch them, but I'm not on TikTok, so send them over to me. Thank you. All right. Now it is time to head over to our next segment, entitled
It's time to ask an addict with your host, Matthew M.
That's right. It's time for our next segment, entitled Ask an Addict. This is the part of the show where this addict, answers questions submitted by y'all, our viewers and our listeners. This is literally a Reddit AMA. Ask me anything. Does not need to be recovery related. I like answering questions. Just what it is. I like that. So if you have any questions that you want to have answered, send them over. They can be recovery questions. They can be non-recovery questions. You could just ask me what my favorite fucking color is. I don't know. I like answering questions. So if you have any questions that you would like to have answered on the show, make sure to send them over on any social media platform. We are listed on all of them. Easiest way to get to them, head to the website, www.cleanandfilthypodcast.com. Top right corner, all of the socials are there. Hit us up, like us, subscribe to us, tweet us, retweet us, add us, this is, that, it's, whatever. All that. Just, there's how you get the information in there. So first question. is who would be my ultimate guest to have on this show. And I'll say I didn't even think about this that deeply. So maybe if I really thought about it more and I could come up with a much more like spiritual answer for maybe somebody that could truly change the entire galaxy type of thing or be better for carrying the message, there might be. But the first name and the name I'm going with, Robert Downey Jr., y'all. Robert Downey Jr. That would be my ultimate guest for this podcast. That would be my ultimate cosign, is to have Mr. Tony Stark himself vibing with the Clean and Filthy podcast. That would be the ultimate. And I will admit, there have been nights where my brain has spun out a little bit. One of the things that I've done, one of the character defects that I have is this fantasy element. And there have been nights where I will just lay in bed and I can't fall asleep because I'm thinking through the moments of what would happen if I ran into this celebrity or if I saw this person or if I talked with this person. And recently, I thought about how that would work if I were to get the opportunity to interview Robert Downey Jr. because I've loved his acting well before the MCU connection. Less Than Zero was amazing. His character on Ally McBeal stole the entire show. Don't believe me? Go watch it again. And everything he's been in, even if I don't really like the movie, he's been phenomenal. Phenomenal. And then when you bring in like the element of the MCU, to have Tony Stark on the motherfucking Clean and Filthy podcast, bruh, like from a Marvel fan, from a recovery perspective, from just to have Robert Downey Jr., who has one of the most hope-filled stories there is, who went from completely hopeless drug addict to the #1 actor in all of Hollywood for a while there. I mean, now he's not Tony Stark anymore. I don't know where his pay grade falls, but that would be crazy. That would be my ultimate. Absolutely would be my ultimate. So that's what we got for first question. Anybody out there knows Robert Downey Jr.? Send him this. Maybe he'll come on the podcast. All right. Next up, I got a question that says, do you consider whippets a relapse? For those who aren't familiar, whippets are little canisters of nitrous oxide. They are the thing that are inside of whipped cream canisters, and they can be inhaled. Before we go any further, yes, I personally, within my recovery, would 100% consider that a relapse. 100% consider that a relapse. Even though it's not a narcotic, even though it's not like directly addictive in the stereotypical forms of addictiveness of what we consider, I would 100% consider that a relapse because my recovery means I do not put any mind-altering or mood-changing substances into my body, and I have not for the last 3.5 years. That includes whippets. That includes steroids. That includes alcohol. That includes marijuana. It includes anything that I'm putting in my body to feel different than how I'm feeling. Because anything that I'm wanting to use to change my mental state, anything that I'm using to get out of myself, I have to look at the core issue, which is, why do I want to feel different? What is missing within the current reality? What is missing within me to have a negative perception of my current reality to where I'm wanting to change that thought process? And that, for me, if it wasn't something that was a mind-altering and mood-changing substance, then it wouldn't be a relapse. But it is. And I loved whippets. Called them shits wah-wahs. You go, wah, 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 wah. I loved those. But they were being used to remove my brain, my thought process from that current reality, which at that point, I usually used them when I was withdrawing from opiates, and they made me not feel for a couple seconds. So yes, that would definitely be a relapse in my opinion. That's what I got. And next question says, what meeting format type is best for newcomers? That's a really good question. And that's a really good question because as we talked about, we always want to try and carry that message. So we have to look at what type of meeting is a newcomer going to be able to hear the best message or are most likely to be open to hearing the message. And this is where it can get difficult. This is where it can get difficult because as we've talked about so many times, addicts are very varied. They're very varied. Wow, that was a bad sentence. But we have so many different ideas and perceptions and how we look at things, and so what really might vibe with somebody might not with somebody else. I've had multiple sponsees, but I had one sponsee who specifically said, where are more speaker meetings? I love going to speaker meetings. I need to hear more speakers. And I had another sponsee who said, I fucking hate speaker meetings. They make me not want to go to meetings. Both of them were newcomers. Both of them were new to the program. Both of them were, I was sponsoring both of them, and they had a completely opposite reaction with that meeting format type. And I get it, especially when you're early on, focusing for like an hour to one person sharing their experience, strength, and hope can be challenging at times. And you can get a little ADD and what's going on over here? And oh, look, oh, there's a girl. Oh, there's a dude. Oh, coffee. Oh, cookies. But for other people, that is the purest way that the message can be carried. For some people's perspective. Some people really feel that hearing that message from a member with time is the best way to understand what happens in the rooms and understand what recovery is. I personally feel where that meeting format can be polarizing. I think one of the greatest things to get newcomers involved especially is doing like a ticket meeting to where random tickets are drawn. Because I know personally I have seen people who had no desire to share, but because their ticket got pulled, they shared and felt that love or got that identification or felt that common vibe within it. So I personally think that's a great one. And I also think the basics, man, steps 1, 2, and 3. Step 1, 2, 3 meetings. There's a reason that my home group does them every single week. They alternate between step 1, step 2, step 3. Done with step 3, let's go back. Step 1, step 2, step 3, because that is the foundation. Those build the base for our Burj Khalifa-sized fucking skyscraper of recovery. You got to have a strong, big-ass base to go 1,800 feet up in the air. Or however fucking tall that building is. Like, that is necessary. So steps 1, 2, and 3, that's where we are at, building that base. So that's for me personally. I'm curious to my listeners and my viewers out there. Let me know, my viewers who are members of the fellowship, let me know what you guys feel from a newcomer's perspective, what the best type of meeting format is for a newcomer. Because I'm curious. I'm curious what your experiences were. My experience was I loved them all. When I got to a meeting, I loved them all. Honestly, I was down with whatever. I liked ones that I got to talk in because I was very self-centered, egotistical when I had, all of 13 days clean and felt like I had something important to say. So open sharing ones were fun for me, even though I wasn't really contributing to the message, just adding to the mess. But we grow. And we change. So let me know what you guys think. I always want to hear everybody else's perspective. And that's what we got for this part of our show of Ask an Addict. If you have more questions that you want to have answered, like I said, send them on social media so we can get them answered on air. I love answering questions.
That part.
All right, y'all. We are almost out of time. But we can't go anywhere without those clean time shout outs. This is the part of the show where we celebrate various members' continuous clean time, continuous time in recovery. We give out shout outs for all of the universally recognized milestones, which are newcomers, anybody from 29 days or less, 30 days clean, 60 days clean, 90 days clean, 6 months clean, 9 months clean, 1 whole year, 18 months clean, and multiple years clean. That's 2 or more. But we also like to give shout outs for those big numbers. So if you got something like 100 days, 500 days, 1,000 days, 10,000 days, send it over so we can give you a shout out on air. So if anybody out there has a clean time coming up between now and next Tuesday, make sure to send it over and we can get you with a shout out on air. So let's get right to it, y'all. First and foremost, the most important person, the newcomer. We got my boy Rafi. Good job, brother. Just stay, man. Just fucking stay. No keep coming back. Just stay. And next up with 30 days clean, we got my sponsee Jay. Well done, brother. And then next up with 6 months clean, we got my boy Kayvon. Well done. You got half of a boop. And then with 6 months clean, we got my sponsee brother Todd. Oh, yeah, half of a boop. And then from Twitter with 9 months clean, we got Abby. Well done. And then with 2 years clean, got that black and gold key tag, we got Stephanie. Boop, boop. Well done. We give them boops for each year. That's just how we do. And next up, with 4 years clean, we got Josh L. Boop, 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 boop. Yeah. And next up from Twitter, we've got Becca with 4 years. Boop, 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 boop. And then we going out to Vegas for my boy Jimmy. Meow, meow. With 5 years clean. Boop, 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 boop. And then we going back to Twitter. We got Pamela P with 7 years clean. Boop, 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 boop. And finally, we got Keith with 26 years clean. I'm going to need some help on this one. Boop, 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 boop. Yeah, that's how we do. Celebrating that clean time, y'all. Congratulations, everybody who picked up clean time today. If you didn't, don't use, and you literally will. That is how this program works. God, clean time just gets me hype. And remember that every single day clean is a successful day. That part, that part, that part, that part, that part, that part. Well, y'all, we are officially out of time. Great episode today. Hopefully everybody enjoyed that. Hopefully you got a good understanding of Tradition 11. Hopefully you like some my favorite moments and answered some questions. I really do appreciate each and every one of you out there. I know that I couldn't be doing this without all of y'all. And I said it earlier, but I'm going to say it again. I love each and every one of you. You know, huge thank you again to our episode sponsor, Etc. by Emily. Huge thank you again to this beautiful song in my ears, Anything by Alice in Wonderland and Valentino Khan. Make sure to download this podcast from anywhere that you consume your podcasts from. Make sure to check us out on all the social medias and join us next Tuesday on the live stream if you'd like. And again, thank you all. I love you all. And go Suns, baby.